this week's version of the Yamhill Leadership Roundtable. And I will introduce people as best I can in the order that I see them on my screen. So we've got with us Mayor Scott Hill from the City of McMinnville. We've got Alexandra Hengen from Executive Director of Yamhill Community Action Partnership. We've got Director Lindsay Manfred from Health and Human Services at Yamhill County. We have Takesha Wydrow from Sheridan Revitalization Committee. We have Mary Linda Watkins from the City of Carleton. We have Howie Harkema, all-around community activist and advocate, and interim director of Champion Team at the moment. And we have Mayor Rick Rogers from the City of Newburgh, and we have Commissioner Mary Starrett on the line. So welcome, everybody. And what I'd like to get started with is an update from Director Manfred on corona, since this is really, it's been focused on coronavirus for the past year, on the transmission of the virus in our community, what things are looking like, and really the real important thing from my perspective, which is vaccines. And last week she did a great update, but things change all the time. And sometimes it takes me hearing the same thing over and over again to realize I need to go to Get Vaccinated Oregon, for example, to register. So Director Manfred, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here again. And as you said, things are different than they were last Tuesday when I was here. So I'm happy to be back and to share some of the new developments and pieces. I'll start by just first mentioning, we are watching our case counts and positivity rate really closely right now. Like many other places, we are beginning to see an uptick in cases, and a slight increase in our positivity rate. Was about 2.7% a couple of weeks ago, and is now at about 3.5. So it's still well under that 5% threshold we want to keep it at, but definitely worth noting the increase. And so we're monitoring that and watching it really closely. We are hoping that maybe what we're seeing is a little blip based on travel and gatherings around spring break and things like that. So hopefully we'll begin to see those things level off. But again, we're watching them closely, continuing to remind people to follow all of the guidance that is being recommended for them, including when you are able to get vaccinated. And I know the vaccine is not nearly as readily available as none of us would like, including myself. But the governor did just announce today a new development that as of April 19th, all people in Oregon who are age eligible will be eligible to get the vaccine. So that's great news. The more we can get, the more people vaccinated, the better. Of course, what we haven't seen is the surge in vaccines we were all hoping for, that we thought may come as early as late March. But again, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen an influx. We don't know why we haven't seen the influx. Really, we're waiting on what we are hearing will be a surge of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that just really hasn't come. We've gotten some shipments, but not at the level that we're anticipating, and we're hearing that it may be a week or two before we get more of that vaccine. And the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine we'll continue to get, but it's coming from the feds at sort of a regular pace. So we're not anticipating any huge influx of those two vaccines. Largely, the county's been getting Moderna. We have had some Pfizer vaccine, and we are working really hard to get additional Pfizer vaccine, especially for those 16 and 17-year-olds, where that's the only vaccine they can get. We did get some vaccine couple of weeks ago, and we tried to focus really hard on our 16 and 17-year-olds in the community who were medically fragile or who were receiving disability services and things of that nature to ensure that we got that vulnerable population. But now coming the 19th, right, all of them will be eligible. And so we want to find a way to make sure that any 16 and 17-year-old who wants that vaccine is able to. We're also making plans with the assumption that very soon the Pfizer vaccine, which is the only one that can be used for under 18, will also be approved for 12-year-olds and up. So just thinking about those things. So we're working with our healthcare partners to understand what that volume and that number looks like for us. And we have a storage plan. We're ready to go. We can receive that vaccine and are just working with the state to figure out the best way for us to do that and how quickly we can get it. So we are doing that. And the other thing that I just like to share, and I know Commissioner Kula, Commissioner Starrett, I did share this document with you yesterday. We've been getting questions, great questions around how the county is allocating or distributing vaccine. So once a week, that vaccine either comes directly to us and we provide it out to other community partners like healthcare providers in their clinics, some pharmacies, and then our big throughput events. And we do that every week. The state asks us where we want that vaccine to go, and each week we direct where we want that vaccine to go, with a few caveats. Our federally qualified health center receives their own federal allocation, and some pharmacies receive their own federal allocation. So that would be in addition to what the public health department receives and distributes around. And so we've been getting lots of good questions about, what does that process look like? How are you doing that? And then really importantly, how are we making sure that, especially as we see everyone become eligible on the 19th, how are we making sure no group, no person gets left behind that might have a harder time accessing vaccine for a variety of reasons? So we developed a document that is available on our website in English and Spanish that really talks about that. And at a really high level, I'll share just a couple of highlights, and then I really encourage folks to go and look at it. From a high perspective, when we look at our vaccine that comes into us, we're using sort of a 40-40-20% split that seems to be working for our community. What that means is about 40% of the vaccine that comes to Yamhill County we use for two of the large throughput events, one that's been operated by Providence Health System in Newburgh, and another one that's been operated by 12th and Valley Fire and Rescue in McMinnville, with support from the Medical Reserve Corps and different people, but largely they're handling those. So about 40% of the vaccine goes there. Another 40% of the vaccine we're pushing out to healthcare providers, pharmacies, and partners like that, where they can really connect with their own patients and people on an individual level and get them in. And then we reserve 20% of our vaccine for mobile events. And this looks a lot of different ways. Sometimes the mobile event is, providing additional vaccine to Providence Health System, who have been great about going in homes and vaccinating people in their homes. Sometimes it's going to agricultural or food processing plants. Sometimes it's going to older adult communities and vaccinating them there. And then we're also looking geographically. We know that there's certain parts of our community that have been much harder hit with COVID illness. And so really geographically wanting to make sure that we are going on site and doing that. So we're really wanting to make sure that we don't lose those folks and that we are able to always reserve vaccine to make sure that those needs are met, to make sure that we can go to shelters, to make sure that we can go to a place where we know that houseless individuals congregate and be able to vaccinate them with our partners through YCAP and other places. And so we're wanting to just, again, provide that reassurance that while everyone will become eligible, we are still wanting to make sure that we are thinking about those populations that don't have an easy time accessing it. So I, again, encourage you to go and look at that document. Our team did a nice job putting it together, and really just want to say thank you to all the partners that are listed in that document. We could not do any of these things without those incredible partners. So those are my updates. I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
And I will, while we're talking, I'll link in the chat too, so people can quickly go to it. Are there questions for Director Manfred? Mayor Rogers.
Yeah, I just had not so much a question as first, just a thank you, right, Director Manfred. I've heard we do a week, or every 2 weeks we do a call with partners in town, and resoundingly positive response to public health. So thank you so much. And most recently, it was the folks at George Fox just extended a great thank you to you and to your staff. So thank you in these unprecedented times. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And then, Director, I have a question. Is there, do you anticipate any time savings or labor savings with not having to go through the eligibility rigmarole, that we'll be able to be a person that will be able to do more appointment setting or phone calls, that kind of thing? Or is it really not, are you not doing that work?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think that, yes, that is going to make the logistics of the behind the scenes work far easier, far more streamlined. And I think it'll make the process that we are able to provide the community members themselves much more straightforward answers. I know oftentimes we get questions and folks get really frustrated when our answer isn't isn't 100% this or 100% that, and it's because there are so many nuances, and a lot of those revolve around eligibility, and being able to remove that piece is really helpful for our team. And as you said, those folks that are having to manage that on the back end are able to spend their time doing other things like outreach to agricultural facilities, just you name it, just different types of pieces of work that we'll be able to do that I'm really looking forward to.
Great, thank you. And then, are there any other questions for Director?
I do have one, Casey.
Oh, yes, I was like, I think that Nicole unmuted herself, but I didn't know if you had a question. Go ahead, Nicole.
I do, thank you. A while back, we had talked about Linfield donating some special freezers for the Pfizer vaccine, and then since the county wasn't really getting any Pfizer vaccine, they were moved to another area where they could be put to use. Did those come back as part of the storage plan, or how did that end up working out?
Yeah, so I actually don't know if they ended up sending their ultra cold freezer storages out other places. I know that we still have access to them. One of the things that has to happen is before we can put any vaccine in a fridge or freezer, whether it's COVID vaccine or any other vaccine, we need to have it regulated at temperature with this specific tool called a data logger that monitors it for 2 weeks. Sadly, the data loggers are hard to come by right now. And so we have, as are many of the equipment pieces, right? So we actually think we may have just secured some with the help of actually from the Oregon Health Authority early this morning. And once we get those, we're able to track that data, make sure that it's holding temperature and doing all those things we want to be cautious of, and then we could store vaccine on our own. However, we have, I've said this a million times because we have amazing partners, and Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue also has storage capacity, and they're able to support us, and they've actually been helping us with that, even with that first round of Pfizer vaccine that we had, because we that was the one time we received first and second doses at the same time for various reasons, and so we've been needing to store those second doses at the ultra cold temp for the 3 weeks before we vaccinate for second doses. And so they have been great and are able to do that. And so we're really using them as part of our planning process for being able to receive Pfizer vaccine.
That's great. And I'm sorry to make you repeat yourself. I believe you said you do also have access to some freezers at Linfield?
We do, yes. Yeah.
So you kind of have a couple of different locations where at least once you get the monitoring equipment, you can store if you need to.
Absolutely. And that vaccine, the Linfield one, would come on site to public health. I always like to have a backup plan.
Right. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then I think Howie Harkema has a question for you, Director.
Director Manfred, I may have missed this in your information. Do we know in Yamhill County how many people have been vaccinated?
We do. We have a general sense. We actually, I could pull the exact number from our database, but the state's dashboard is largely up to date within a week or so. So, and we could pull that up and look, but I think we're pushing close to 30,000 or so. And of course, some of those folks have gotten it with us. Some of them have gone other places. That's everyone in the county. So not just people that we've vaccinated when you're looking at that dashboard.
Thank you.
And then perhaps a follow-up question. Since Howie works with folks who are experiencing homelessness kind of all the time, what's the plan these days for getting them access to vaccines? Since it is a challenging group to work with, and where to find them, for example. Sure. Yes, the logistics are more challenging than some other groups for sure. So we have a number of things happening. So we're working closely with YCAP, see Alexandra on the call, with YCAP and with Providence and Provoking Hope to identify locations. Some of those have already happened. So individuals in the hoteling program are being vaccinated. We've got scheduled dates for some of our shelters. And then there's also places like we've got a date on the books for the co-op breakfast. And YCAP really wanted to have 2 weeks to be able to circulate the information through the postcards that they've made. And so that work's happening now, and we'll be there on that day with vaccines for them. And then we've also identified
at least one other location in McMinnville of a place that's not affiliated with any organization, that is just a known location that folks often congregate. And that was a specific request that came after Mandy from YCAP was having conversations about how best to assure access to all of these individuals. And one of the things was it felt really important to have a location that wasn't tied to any specific organization, shelter, faith-based organization, and so we've landed on a location and are working on finalizing the details there.
Okay, great. Howie, you're still unmuted. Did you have any follow-ups?
I just wanted to let both Alexandra and Lindsay know that this morning, 5 of my staff got their Johnson & Johnson inoculation, and 6 of my volunteers also got it. So thank you very much, both of you.
Great, glad to hear that.
Just more of a comment, I guess. If we are looking for some of the folks that are experiencing houselessness, and you probably already know this, but certainly all the meals in the churches in Newburgh would be a good place to capture folks. That's a pretty popular destination. So,
yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any other questions or comments for Director Manfred? And I did see that we just got an email from Jody Christensen noting that Yamhill County is going into I guess it's the extra warning week. I don't know the lingo, but before moving from lower risk to moderate. So as Director Manfred noted, let's work on keeping that down. All right, any other comments or questions? I'm surprised that Alexandra hasn't asked you a bunch of questions, but it's probably because you two communicate, so you've got it. Okay, well, thank you very much. And then I'm going to move on to Alexandra. I asked Alexandra to give folks an update on kind of the motel sheltering project, how we can help with the food bank warehouse, and a lot of the kind of the other plans that Director Hendon has been working on over this past year. So welcome. And I did note that you at one point had mentioned to me working under kind of the perspective of Built for Zero. So if you could kind of explain that as well, that would be great.
Sure.
And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I will try to kind of do a broad overview of where we've been and where we hope to go, and then answer any questions. Our agency, much like others across the county, are striving to continue to augment our services, with relief funds and programs as we see our low-income and vulnerable households hit. Early on, most of you have heard, like with our youth services, we were able to expand mental health. We were able to increase academic support, partner with local nonprofits like the Community Wellness Collective in Newburgh and Newburgh School Districts. Our energy and weatherization teams were able to push forth an additional $1 million in energy assistance. Our food bank switched to supplemental food boxes for distribution. We increased our food purchasing so that we could give more direct food allocations to our partner agencies. We even expanded a few key partnerships for food delivery to vulnerable populations, such as families with young children that were at risk, and partnered with a couple of nonprofits and those in our moteling program. And under housing stabilization, we immediately began the Motel Shelter Project. Most of you know we've been able to keep about an average of 20 households at any given time in that project, specifically those who are most medically fragile and vulnerable and unhoused during COVID. We've also mobilized funds to 2 shelter programs to increase winter sheltering, and especially during the winter months, we knew that was going to be a challenge, and then we rolled out rental assistance. And we did rentals assistance before, but with state funds coming in, we knew we could expand that significantly because of the barriers that were coming up for different households. So we've heard, work reduction, loss of jobs, no childcare at home, limited supports from schools as kids have been out of schools and they've been closed. So each household that's been coming to us for various programs, we've noticed, it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. So we want to be forward-looking in the coming year. And there's 2 kind of service areas that I wanted to just kind of highlight. what we're thinking will be the greatest need in the coming year for our vulnerable households. And Casey, you already mentioned one, that's just food access and food insecurity. So despite the interventions we've done, we know we've already delivered over 500,000 additional pounds of food across the county, even just in the first 6 months of our COVID response. We know at a bare minimum, we want to keep at least that additional 500,000 pounds of food going out across the county. We're pursuing funding opportunities via grants and donations to be able to do that. We're hoping to do that via supplemental food boxes. We don't want to stop that. Those are working for some of our partner agencies and delivery to households that can't make it to specific sites. We want to be able to continue to increase our direct food purchase. Sometimes that comes through the Oregon Food Bank, sometimes not. That's usually very unpredictable. So we would like to have funds in an account that we can say, okay, here's the food gap currently across our partners. Here's what we could go purchase at wholesale. Here's how we can deliver it. We'd like to increase our capacity to get especially refrigerated foods and produce out to our most isolated communities. Right now we have one refrigerated truck and a certain delivery schedule. We'd like to be able to increase that and do more deliveries, and then we'll see less food waste as well. Additionally, if we're able to increase this, we want to expand our partner agencies. So either partner agencies who'd like to do more meal offerings or more pantry days, or new partners. So we have a couple that we're already working with. We have a few on the wait list. So our intention is to look at those and onboard them throughout the next year. Housing stabilization is obviously a critical topic. You guys have heard about our resources for both our unhoused neighbors and our precariously housed. So I just wanted to walk through those kind of two approaches. For our unhoused neighbors, we have definitely increased shelter beds in the last year. We reported that out, that we've gotten up to 400 shelter beds, which was an increase from 326. We do not want to lose these beds. So our goal in the next year is to maintain them. One way we're doing this, which we've done so in Newburgh, we're also looking at McMinnville, is to increase the capacity of existing shelter providers. And that means that they might become no longer just an inclement shelter provider, but a year-round shelter provider. And the bed eligibility might be shorter stay for beds versus longer stay for beds. So at a bare minimum, we want to make sure we keep those beds. The other way we've been doing that is the Motel shelter project. Right now, I have 52 households that are in the project. So it's gone up a little bit from the average of 20, and those households are actively working with our case managers. They are looking at permanent solutions, and 75% of the households that we've had over the last year have exited into positive placements. So we know we don't want to lose that resource. YCAP has been in conversations with Providence, and we have collectively applied for Project Turnkey. That means that we could merge the Motel shelter project into a hotel facility. We're looking at operating it as we are now for about 3 years. We'd be doing some community assessments during the time, and then we would like to come back and see if there's an opportunity to develop it into permanent supportive housing, which is a large initiative of Providence. So Providence would come in as owner, YCAP would come in as operator, and we'd walk down that path. We're currently in phase 2 of Project Turnkey, so we don't have a hotel that has been solidified, but we've had some offers out there, and hopefully one of those will come through. So I'll get an update later today at 2, so we're just kind of in limbo right now. The other way that we have been working with our unhoused neighbors is through coordinated entry, which is the first place that someone can go to let us know that they are currently unhoused and need assistance, or they are precariously housed and need assistance. We call ours Any Door Yamhill. We have seen our volume triple in that line, so we get well over 100 calls a day, and we have generally historically only had one staff who mans that line and does the responses. So again, it wasn't 100 calls a day, but now it is. And to help with that, we've increased our street outreach team. There's some flyers available on our website. I can also email those to Casey so that we can do more outreach in the community and divert some of those phone calls or get entry into coordinated entry out in the community. We actually are bringing on this month a shelter in reach position, which means we will have a staff member dedicated to going to all shelters across the county and finding out who is staying there, how often they're coming, having those conversations and seeing if we can actually help them out in the community instead of just relying on them calling in. And then we also are bringing on a rapid diversion specialist and resources that when people do call our coordinated entry, we can actually put resources into play right away to divert them from homelessness, because oftentimes people will wait for a while on any door Yamhill to get a response. It depends on what resources are available, whether it's shelter, whether it's a housing solution. So we'd like to reduce that wait time and keep things moving, and this will help with that. We continue to run the shelter collaborative. That's our goal for the next year as well. A huge goal of that group is to seek resources that YCAP can bring into the county, that we can work on more capacity building, more training, more reinforcements, more supplies to every shelter partner that is interested in it across the county. YCAP's not the only shelter provider, and each shelter operates differently on who can stay and what type of shelter environment they have, how many beds they have. So we would like to empower everyone to have full capacity and have the resources they need and be more in touch with each other, build out potentially some referral systems, things like that. So that will be a goal in the coming year. Tied into that, we were accepted into Built for Zero, which is a national program that was right as COVID was coming out. And that program will work with local communities to basically get to a functional zero, which means that more people will be exiting homelessness than entering homelessness. And we've done intentional work across Yamhill County with veteran homelessness, but we selected as part of this project to work with our chronically homeless population. We really would like to look at having a by name list and looking at where they're coming from, what are the barriers they're experiencing, what resources they need. We've pulled in multiple community partners that are part of groups that are actively meeting. They have been during COVID and they will continue to do so. And as we do that behind the scenes work, we'll be able to produce resources for the community as well, such as a dashboard on what chronic homelessness looks like and what resources might be right-sized for Yamhill County, and build out those local solutions. And finally, I think the other thing that's really involved in this, you can see, I haven't listed all of our programs that kind of create the safety net sources for those who are unhoused in our community, but it really does involve a lot of partnerships. Director Manfred already talked about the work with the vaccines, which neither of us could do, without the support of the other. We continue to work with the Oregon Health Authority as a CBO and make contacts and give out information. We've worked with the YCCO, so we work with Poking Hope, we've worked with Champion Team and Encompass. There are so many partners that we want to continue to loop into all of these different projects and work so that we can see our unhoused population very holistically and be aware of what responses are working and what we want to be able to collectively invest in to make sure that we're providing really useful and meaningful supports. The final thing in housing stabilization is kind of the other side. So we've talked about the unhoused, but then there's the precariously housed. So rent relief has been huge. I think I've reported a couple of times, by the end of December 2020, we had put out over 1.7 million in rental relief. As of this week in 2021, we're almost at another million of rental relief that has gone out. We've requested some gap funds from the state. Our wait list right now, as of today, is at least another 200,000 of rental relief that is needed. We were just notified of an allocation of 5.2 million of rental relief that we're going to be able to deliver from the Emergency Rental Assistance Fund. That is supposed to be made available to YCAP sometime in early May. We're working out the details with that. It will be a similar form of assistance, but it will be run through some different portals and software. We're working out the kinks with the state that they're introducing. So there's a lot of education that's going to be happening, education with partners on how to access these resources, education with tenants and landlords on how these resources work. We never give payments directly to clients. So these clients these payments go directly to the landlords, and we work very closely with them. And we attempt to make households whole. So instead of having households come back every 30 days to get another approval, our case managers spend a lot of time vetting out their eligibility and the factors that they have in front of them. And if giving 5 months of rental assistance at the first time seems to be like, we can identify a point that they're going to be stable or they have additional resources that they've identified that will be there for them, we would rather do that and let them work on other other forms of stabilizing their household than worry about coming back every 30 days and how to go through a process of rent. We also want to keep the process moving. We don't want to slow down the process for anybody. We are in conversations with the Housing Authority right now. They are trying to roll out, in partnership with the state, the Landlord Compensation Fund. So some of you have potentially heard about that. I won't list all the differences here, but I'm talking with Nikki very frequently at the Housing Authority. That will reimburse landlords 80% of the rent that is owed to them, and then they take a 20% loss on top of it. The first round of the Landlord Compensation Fund hasn't mobilized just yet. The state is, again, working with a new software. So I think they've had a few delays, but in the interim, we would like to reach out to those landlords and say, if you're waiting and you're not sure you're funded, we can at least go via the tenant with the tenant-based rent relief if they will apply and work with us. So as the Landlord Compensation Fund rolls out, I believe the Housing Authority and YCAP will continue to do outreach and tell partners how to access both to maximize resources getting out across the county. We do know there's one other wave after this, at least, of federal rental assistance. I anticipate it to probably be in the similar allocation to the $5.2 million, but that number is anyone's guess. So we believe that there is going to be sufficient dollars to stabilize households in 2021 in Yamhill County. And I will pause there because there was a lot of information. Happy to answer any questions.
It's a wonderful place to stop, though, too. That's a very hopeful statement. So thank you. Yes, thank you, Alexandra. Are there questions or comments for Alexandra?
Yes.
Mayor Rogers.
Yeah, Alexandra, I know I've heard the statistics about the moteling program in the past, and I've got to say, I just think it's amazing that 75% of clients are finding positive outcomes after moteling. That's a number that I never thought I would hear, to be honest with you. That's just absolutely fantastic. How long after their separation from the moteling are you monitoring the families? Does it continue on for a while, or?
As long as they need supports, oftentimes we're doing check-ins at 3 and 6 months, but it depends on the availability of our case managers and the different supports they get plugged into, kind of where they land. So I don't have a firm number because it varies by client.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Other questions, comments for Alexandra? Alexandra, I wanted to ask, with Champion Team closing its doors, by the end of the month, what are the service? Because you're familiar with it. Are there any other services that YCAP's been able to pick up, or that there's duplication, or that you think you will be able to do in the future? And sorry, I didn't prep you for this question, so.
No, that's fine. I think I'm used to that by now. So we're in conversations about that right now. I don't think I have a definitive answer on what YCAP can or cannot do, but the peer support that was provided via Champion Team and that type of interaction in our community is needed. So we're in conversations with Champion Team as they're walking through this process, and our housing stabilization staff to identify what gaps might exist, where we can divert specific resources. Right now, our outreach team, like I said, we've brought on additional outreach workers, and now we'll have in-reach workers. So those with doubling, adding 2 positions, that will help us connect with individuals that would normally end up at Champion Team. But we want to be intentional about building out services moving forward. So hopefully we'll be able to share a little bit more.
Okay, thanks. And then I have another one for you, since I got a question from the News Register, not Nicole, about it. And it sounds like Mayor Hill got the same one. With House Bill 2006 on its way to passing, do you have any plans that you're ready to share with the public about a proposal to the city of McMinnville, since the city of McMinnville might get money as part of that, for a navigation center specifically?
Yeah, so YCAP has been following this, obviously, as a provider of, foundational framework around homelessness interventions in the county. We're really interested to see what opportunities might expand some of those resources that we can work with partners to get off the ground. And again, we want that to be right-sized. We want that to be timely and effective, much like the Motel shelter program has been. So we don't have any concrete plans, but we're in conversations, and we hope to be a supportive partner, a lead, whatever role is the most effective for our residents and services, YCAP will be participating in.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's about what I said to Steve and when he asked me. So, but thanks for keeping aware of it. Are there other questions for Alexandra? At this point, it might be, I know, Alexandra, you had a few more things you were hoping to share, it sounded like, because you were like, I'm going to pause.
Oh, actually, that was it.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure that Representative Gomberg has just joined us, or not just, but he joined us while you were explaining what's happening at YCAP. And I wanted to make sure that we get an opportunity for him to update us on his legislative world. And he has a tie on, so he must be in Salem or on a video going into Salem. So thank you, Alexandra. And Representative Gomberg, what would you like to share with people today?
Oh, my goodness, Commissioner, am I in Salem? Yes. I leave the house at 6:30 in the morning for 8 a.m. hearings. We are on the floor through lunch and then through the dinner hour until about 9 p.m., which means I get home in time to watch the 11 o'clock news. I'm in Salem. Thank you very much.
But I heard...
Go ahead.
I heard that there's a computer-generated voice in your spaces these days.
The Oregon Constitution requires that bills be read before we vote on them. And that is a requirement that goes back before photocopiers, maybe to before most legislators could read. In modern times, we normally vote to waive that requirement and just read a summary of the bill rather than the entire bill. Now, some people would say, well, what's the big deal? How long can these bills be? Well, most bills are 2 or 3 pages. But we had a bill last week that renames the Oregon Liquor Control Commission the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission. Not controversial, but every place in the statute that OLCC is mentioned was included in that bill, and it was 170 pages, and it took about 20 hours to read that bill into the record. Why are we reading bills into the record? Because there are differences of strategy, strategy and priorities amongst the two parties, and one party has decided to slow the process down rather than let it move forward, and here we are. So that being said, let me tell you that last night, late in the evening, we voted out a package of bills to help address homelessness in Oregon, one of our most pressing day-to-day concerns. And I'll remind you that homelessness is not just people sleeping under our bridges and pushing shopping carts. It's families sleeping in cars, families that are staying with relatives, families that are kids that are couch surfing. It's a pervasive problem, and we're trying to do something about it. Last week, at the end of the week, we passed out a $250 million package, and the key components of it were to help kids. Help kids with summer learning for those that have fallen behind in their education while they've been learning from home. To help parents with childcare if they have to make a choice between going to work or taking care of their kids. Summer activities for kids. And there was also an affordable housing and a wildfire element to that package, but that came out last Friday. I think the most provocative thing that's going on right now is that the federal government, Washington, D.C., is sending money to the states. And they've sent Oregon something in the realm of about $7.5 billion. That's with a B. And as you know, some of that money is coming to counties, some of that money is coming to cities, some of that money is coming to school districts. About $2.6 billion is coming to the state, which we are using to try and balance our state budget because of revenue shortfalls as people aren't paying as many taxes during COVID, but also because of our increased expenses to pay for the costs of the pandemic, to help our small business economy recover, and to help fight the devastating wildfires. About $700 million of that money is being set aside for infrastructure projects. And each legislator was asked to come up with a wish list. Imagine what that looks like. I contacted city managers and mayors and school districts. I contacted chambers of commerce and ports and special districts, and took a list of about 50 proposals and narrowed it down to about a dozen proposals that deal with aging and vulnerable water systems, rusting sewer systems, dams that are vulnerable, and economic opportunities like the Oregon Coast Aquarium, the Lincoln City Cultural Center, and in Yamhill County. The proposal that I submitted was on behalf of the Sheridan School District, who is seeking to purchase property across the street for a career technical education facility. There's a large building there and a smaller sub-building. It's right across the street. They see purchasing this structure as giving them the resources they need to teach kids more about the kinds of jobs and the kind of skills they need for those jobs locally. And I was very pleased to add that to my list. What's going to happen to this list? Your guess is as good as mine right now. I understand that at the end of the day, that several thousand proposals were submitted by the 90 legislators. I describe it as a feeding frenzy, but there's more fish than there is fish food. So we're trying to get this sorted out. But I'll also tell you, being representing a coastal district, I learned a long time ago, you don't catch any fish if you don't put a line in the water. And I've put lines in the water for communities up and down the coast and inland through the Front Range. So we'll see where it goes from here. Anyhow, that's a quick primer on where we're at today. The news will be different tomorrow. Happy to answer any questions for you.
Representative Gomberg, thank you for that update. And the thing that comes to mind most readily is you've talked about how a couple of different projects on the coastal portion of your district were dependent upon state lottery dollars, yeah. And that because there was essentially there was a pause on the spending of them. Is there any news on that, or did you provide a proposal to backfill the lottery fund?
Well, let's start with this. You're absolutely right. We have a process here in the legislature where we recommend, we identify projects to be paid for through Capital Construction Committee with lottery bonds. Lottery bonds are backed by the sale of lottery tickets. And there were about 234 projects across the state of Oregon that were slated to be funded with lottery bond money. No, wait a second. I'm so sorry. It was $234 million that went to 35 projects. That sounds better, doesn't it? When we closed our restaurants, closed our bars, closed our taverns, we quit selling lottery tickets. And for the first time in 30 years, we were unable to issue lottery bonds. And so all of those projects that in 2019 were told they were funded, found out that they'd gotten a rubber check. So to answer your question now with that background, first of all, I have submitted those projects to go back on the list for lottery bond funding. But I worry that first of all, we've got people that were expecting the money in 2020, and now they may be having to wait until 2022. And oh, by the way, there are more new projects looking for that money. So we've essentially got 2 biennium of requests bottled up in the committee right now. So we've asked for them to be funded with lottery bonds, but I've also put them on this new ARPA list, the America Recovery Plan ARPA list. So I'm trying to get them funded, and I don't care which pot of money we fund them out of. I'm pushing for those projects and a dozen more along the coast. I say the coast, but forgive me, my coastal district.
And I think we understand, Representative. I just recall that at least one of them was something about dams and assessment of safety of dams up above Newport. Yeah, whenever I see the little earthquakes off the coast, I think of your project and trying to get it funded.
The city of Newport relies on the Big Creek dams for their water supply, not only for their residents and their businesses, but for all of you when you come over and you visit Newport. And these are the most seismically vulnerable dams in the state. It would take a 3.5 earthquake to collapse the dams. I describe it as we don't need a major earthquake, just a big truck going by and hitting a pothole, and those dams would start to shake loose. And if they go, there's a housing community downstream, and then Highway 101. They would take out houses, they would take out highways. It would take the community a decade to recover from that disaster. So we're looking to start rebuilding and replacing the dams, but it's an $80 million project for a town of 10,000 people. I mean, you see that every day in our small towns, that water systems and sewer systems exceed the ability of local communities to pay for, which is why this funding opportunity during COVID is so critically important. And it's like a once in a generation opportunity to begin to look at some of those critically important infrastructure projects.
Agreed. And I think I look over at Takesha Wydro with Sheridan, between Sheridan and Willamina, you know, there's some specific water treatment issue and needs that I keep thinking about, right? Because they're expensive.
Yep.
Are there other questions or comments for Representative Gomberg?
All right. Well,
Thank you.
Good things. I'll try and join you as I'm able at your regular meetings, but I'm going to jump off the call and get ready for another one.
All right. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. And then I'm going to move on to updates from Commissioner Starrett. I think she's still with us. And Commissioner Starrett, what would you like to share with people today in the community and here on the call?
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, everybody. Just a real quick update. The Housing Authority project that is going to be housing, and it was hoped that it would be built in one phase, but I think they're coming up with some issues in terms of funding the whole project. So hopefully we'll be able to find a way to backfill that funding so that project can get done. If not, it would be built in two phases, kind of like the project that the county is doing for those with addiction and persistent mental health issues that's being built in Sheridan. So the county is doing that in two phases. And just another, which would be a really wonderful thing for Yamhill County and for our families, is House Bill 3366, which Representative Noble is one of the sponsors. And what that does is it provides basically a pilot project for a number of counties to enter in for family treatment courts. And as everybody knows, Yamhill County, or maybe you don't, is one of the first drug courts in the country. And what that really does is effectively give people with addiction problems a way out other than incarceration, helps their families and gets them through the system. And it's been really, really successful. But if we are approved for this and we become one of the advocate and initial adopter counties, we would be able to get more families into treatment. And recovery does affect, or addiction affects 10 people for every addict. And we're talking about kids, and then it becomes a generational thing. So hopefully we would be considered one of those smaller counties that would enter into an agreement to do this family treatment court, and that would be through the family Family Wellbeing Council. Sorry, and we're initially sort of set up to be able to address some of the issues that kids are having, and foster kids and bio parents and all of that. This would be a perfect umbrella organization for that. So just hope that we get that. And with that, I'll end. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before asking for questions, I have a question for you. And that is, how can the people on the call here help, or is there a way for them to help with the phasing of the Housing Authority project? Because that's a really significant and major project.
It is a major project. And I think from what I understand, just anecdotally or just off the top of my head, is that if there's a different designation, rural or urban, that affects funding. And I think that when you look at how McMinnville is the designation there, it would affect the funding. So I've been working with Vicki and hopefully finding a couple of different options that they could look into. And I don't know, it's just going to be a question of finding the right pot of money with the right regulations. But in any event, the project is going to go forward. It might not be completed all at one time, but it's definitely on course to be completed.
Okay, great. Thank you for that update on it. It's such a big deal. So, and thank you for your help and work with it. And then it looks like maybe Howie, do you have a comment for Commissioner Starrett, or we're just going to jump in and say something?
Commissioner Starrett, is there a funder that you've looked at to backfill for the balance of the funding necessary with the Housing Authority?
Well, I think that was what we were looking at, is what are some of the other options? What are some of the other requirements for additional funding? So really, Vicki is looking at what they're allowed to do and who they're allowed to tap into. So I think right now she's just looking at those other options and finding again that right pot of money, because when you know that there are strings attached to every one of these particular resources, so they're on it.
Great.
And then Mayor Rogers has a question.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. And Commissioner Starrett, how many units are we talking about for this project?
200.
Oh, awesome. That is fantastic. And is it, so it'll be under the Housing Authority, and we're targeting low to very low income, or is this rental assistance, or has that been determined?
No, this is low income, and we're looking at some Section 8. But what's good about this project is typically you'll find the problem exists when you only have 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartments, and it limits family size. This is going to have other options for bigger apartments, and so you're going to have a variety of different options. So, it's huge. I mean, it's a game changer for McMinnville, but once again, it's just kind of came up with I think we're looking at about $1 million shortfall at this point, and trying to find the money for that.
Very good. If there's anything that we can do to help, and I don't know about money, seeing as budget season starts tonight for us, but if there's anything we can do, please let us know.
Great. If you have a spare $1 million lying around, Mayor, we'll take it.
Yeah. Well, let me bring that up with the city manager tonight. I'm sure he'd love to hear that.
That's why the city managers don't join us. It looks like Takesha Widra has a comment or question too.
Yeah, just quick, maybe I missed this, but where is this going to be?
McMinnville, do you know where the whole Norton Lane area is?
Yeah.
My understanding, Takesha, is that it's in between Evergreen Trailer Park and the Motel.
Comfort Inn, yes.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Great. That's exciting.
By the Housing Authority.
Okay, and is it going to be open to anyone from Yamhill County?
Yeah, I'm not understanding that there are restrictions in terms of just people from the city limits.
Great. That's great.
Yeah, I believe that you want to rent there, you can rent there. Yeah, and that's why it's so significant. I mean, it's a really big project. It's highly packed into this one area. All right. Well, thank you for that update, Commissioner Starrett. I really appreciate hearing it. So, I want to make sure. Oh yeah, I want to make sure that we keep going. It's almost 2:00. We've got some more folks I'd love to hear from. So, if you need to leave, but you need to do an update before you leave, just raise your hand. And I don't see any hands, so I'm going to go to Mayor Scott Hill. And welcome back from vacation.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thanks for those that are on the line and the reports that we've already heard. Just came back from vacation. I'm just going to go over a couple of things that I've been updated on that I'd like to share. This last Friday, we received our talking points to our upcoming budget, 2021-22 budget. And as other cities may mention, this is going to be a tough year to balance our budgets. Our general fund budget is about 32 million, and that is including a 2-month reserve, which is about 5 million that as a council we set, and we're going to try to accomplish that in a 3 to 5 year window. 70% of our costs are made in the general fund are made up of personnel costs. And so we anticipate that we're going to see about a 3% revenue increase, but a 6.4% expense increase. And so that's really pushed us to push really hard on how we're going to be able to balance the budget. Right now, initially, we're looking at about a $2.5 million gap that we're having to come up with. And we've shared some of this in a memo, so I think that I'm able to share that, but we're going to be coming up with a furlough program. Nearly 80 employees, including the city manager and the entire executive team, and other non-union employees will be taking 23 unpaid days, or about 1 week off. And so on Friday, we will be at limited capacity at the city. At the present time, our buildings aren't open, so you're not going to find much of a difference in our service levels. But this is an opportunity for us to have approximately $650,000 in savings, and we anticipate that starting next week and going through September. We're going to be able to use or participate in the Oregon Employment Department's work share program that will allow the city to recover the full value of unpaid wages and allow eligible employees to receive unemployment compensation during that time. So that's one thing that we're looking at. The other piece real quickly, and we've talked a little bit about this, is the American Rescue Plan of 2021. The city anticipates to receive about $7 million. We anticipate that half of that's going to come in during the month of June, and then the other half next June. All those funds to be utilized by December 31st, 2024, with a real focus on water, wastewater, and broadband, and covering the revenue fallout from COVID. And so, we know those monies are coming. We're still trying to get a full understanding of how and the parameters of around that program. We've been to a number of sessions where we're getting more and more information, but again, more to come from that standpoint. Lastly, just real briefly, and I look on the phone, a number of us have been a part of this, but as you know, the infrastructure bill that's coming out of Washington, D.C., and primarily as it relates to transportation, the Newburgh-Dundee Bypass Committee has been meeting furiously this week to prepare and to see how we're going to utilize the possibility of some dollars there. I know Friday is our legislative day. We've got maybe 5 to 6 opportunities to meet with senators and representatives in our area. Wednesday, we're going to be meeting with Congresswoman Bonamici, asking for some dollars from the federal government. A lot of good things happening there, and the bypass committee is completely on top of the opportunities working with ODOT and OTC. So those are just some of my overviews this week. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, Casey.
We will be busy on Friday.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Hill. Yeah, are there questions or comments for the mayor? All right, great. Then I'm going to go on to Mayor Rogers from the city of Newburgh.
All right. Well, great. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for being on the call, and thank you for sharing out. As Mayor Hill said, budget season is upon us. Our first meeting is tonight. I have not heard anything quite as dire as furloughs or reductions in workforce. We haven't. For us here, the American Rescue Plan. We are not going to. We're leaving it where it is and not incorporating it into the budget at this point, just because of the uncertainty surrounding it. But one thing I did hear on a call, and I don't know if y'all were on this, but it was either a lead call or mayor's Oregon Mayors Association, really encouraging all of us to make sure that the expenditure of this money is very transparent, up to the point of, putting it out on our websites to make sure. It's just that good way to take a shot at government if we don't make it really transparent. So anyway, that's for what it's worth. Otherwise, plugging along. One curiosity, I don't know if the other communities are witnessing this as well, but, and I think it was reported recently in the graphic, but so May election, right? It's amazing to me, and I don't know what's causing this, but for 3 seats on the Newburgh School District Board, we've got 7 applicants. And for 3 seats on the Parks and Rec Board, we've got 12 applicants. So I don't know that this is, I don't know this has ever happened. Normally we go begging for people, but anyway, for some reason, for whatever reason, if you guys know why, and if you're witnessing that in your communities, but anyway, other than that, that's what we're doing in Newburgh.
And Mayor, just to give you some anecdotal information, we had an opening for our new DEI committee. We have 9 positions. We had 19 applications. We'd never seen that before. And the quality of those applications were phenomenal.
That's great. That is good. Maybe it's this idea that, we may not be able to affect things on the national level, but locally, yeah, maybe we could do some stuff. So hopefully that's what people are thinking. So anyway.
Well, Mayor, I figured it was because we talked about trails so much that CPRD got the interest that they had.
That's actually what one of the applicants, one of the candidates, actually Jim McMaster, who's running, right, who's a longtime public employee at CPRD. He said, "What did CPRD do to stir up this many candidates?" And I'm like, yeah, I don't know.
You said, "Ask my wife." All right. Well, thank you. Mayor Watkins, what would you like to share with people in Carleton and around the county?
And I remembered to unmute this time. I'm getting better at this. Yes. Well, right now we're just watching the COVID numbers in the county with bated breath. We're set right now. We're scheduled to open the pool. And I know that I've been listening to what everybody's been talking about, thinking the pool doesn't seem like a really big deal in some ways, but it's really important to our city and to our kids. So, it's just, but what we're looking at right now with the classification that we're in, it means we can open with 50% capacity, which we can do because the city actually kind of subsidizes the pool, and at 50% capacity, we're going to be putting in $30,000 a month just to keep it going. But if it goes down, if our county classification worsens, we're not going to be able to do it because that cuts us back to 25% capacity, and we just can't justify the numbers and justify the money. So please tell your people to be good and help us keep those numbers down, because we really want to see that happen. Beyond that, we're going to be discussing water rates tonight at our meeting. It looks like we're going to be looking at about a 4.3% increase in our water rates. Sewer is a different story. That's going to be more like 12%. We're trying to keep it down too, but we're hoping to be able to keep everything down and help folks a little bit with that. Beyond that, there was something. Oh, how could I forget our big news? Our city managers started yesterday. Oh, you have no idea. You just have no idea. Our staff has been amazing in this past 8 months with what they have done and pulled up. And our finance director, who has been acting as city manager, has just done an amazing job. So we can't thank him enough. But that's probably the biggest news right now. I walk around the house doing the happy dance every time I think about it. So with that, we're at 2:05, and I'm going to shut up.
Well, thank you, Mayor, for all the good news and some hard news too. Mayor Rogers and I both say back to you that pools are important for everybody, especially little kids, since, well, there's a lot of chlorine around here. I did want to note that one of the best ways to get our cases lowered, right, is to make sure that if you're eligible to get the vaccine, and if you know people who are uncertain about it, just listen and find out why they're uncertain, right? We really can, educate each other and also provide a listening, because there might be more going on, right?
I had that conversation with somebody today, and they just are queasy about it. They have a friend who got the vaccine, and the friend is actually really sick. He's like 100-degree temperature and in bad shape, and that makes it worse. So I just told him, just get the shot. So we're hoping. Yeah. Excuse me.
A good point. And Mayor Rogers, I wanted to go back to what you said about the American Rescue Plan dollars and the recommendation about really very full transparency. And at the county, we've been talking about essentially just having a website where everything goes, every decision, every conversation, there's a link to it, there's a document on it, plain language. Here's what we're doing, and here's where we're seeking your input, and here's where we're hoping to have a project, so that it's really clear to people. All right, thank you, Mayor. And then to Keisha Wydrow, you're so patient, and I totally got the date wrong when I announced it to my fellow commissioners last week for the cleanup. So, but I'd love to have you remind us. I know it's the 16th though now.
24th.
I know it's the 24th now.
Yeah. Yes, it is April 24th. We're checking people in between 8 and 9, and it goes until about 11:30, and then we're serving pizza, and it's kind of two-part. It's an Recology and the city are running you can dump your household chairs in the yard and that kind of thing. That's a great opportunity, and there's a location for that. And then I don't have the address, but it's on all the flyers, the address where you can bring your stuff there. And then you can call the city if you are disabled or elderly and need some help removing some items. You can get support there. There's also recycling. We'll have a big recycling bin, and I don't know what you call those big, huge ones. The big, huge metal ones. Is that a bin? What's the name of it?
I call it a dumpster, but that's like saying Kleenex.
Yeah. Whatever those big, huge things, there's going to be a bunch of them, and hopefully we'll get a lot cleaned up. And then there's the volunteer side of it, which is what I was talking about earlier, where you show up, and that's at the Sheridan High School parking lot. We'll be there, and we have a bunch of supplies from Solve. We partner with Solve on this, so we've got all the Solve bags and the pickers and all that. So it should be great, and we're encouraging businesses to register. So I have the link and all of the information I've been sending out. Register ahead of time, and we're gonna hopefully get around 100 or more. I would love to have 150. That would be fabulous, and families come out there, and we'll spread everyone out. So we're not going to be clumped in. You'll all get spread out, and it'll be great. And so that's April 24th, and this Thursday we're having a meeting at the Monroe Event Center, our first in-person meeting for the revitalization movement since the last time it was warm like this. So it's been a while. So we're excited about that. We did our last meetings outside, but this one is in Monroe Event Center at 6 o'clock this Thursday night. If anyone wants to be a little bit more involved in the cleanup there, feel free to come and get the information and help out. We certainly could use more volunteers. That's the main thing I had to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being among the leadership to do this work. It's huge in so many ways. And it's the 24th. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Takesha. Are there any questions for Takesha? All right. Howie Harkema, what would you like to share with the community today? And I'd like to note that this first all started when Howie filmed me explaining what the emergency declaration was for COVID 13 months ago.
Yeah. First, I'd like to thank Takesha for getting Mayor Harry Cooley to my mayor's meeting last week. It was very enjoyable. I'm sorry to hear that because he's building a home elsewhere that he will no longer at some point be mayor. That's unfortunate, but first of all, about 4 months ago, I came up with an idea to have a monthly meeting with all of our local mayors to talk about the homeless issue. And Scott and I went back and forth about different possibilities and came up with a plan. And the first one was last Thursday, and Mayor Rogers and Mayor Cooley and Mayor Potter from Yamhill were all in attendance, as well as the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. And we got to ask great questions, got great answers and some speculations. And we got to find out where each of those cities are at in what's going to be coming as far as our homeless population. As we all know, Jimmy Jones, about 14 months ago, stated, and he is out of Salem and an expert in homelessness, that our numbers will double over the next 10 years. Well, that was pre-COVID. And that was also pre-wildfire, and that was also pre-ice storms. So there is a much greater contingent out there that could fall into homelessness, and we're trying to iron out the details over time. It's a once-a-month meeting, and will occur always on the first Thursday of the month. And we're glad that Mayor Hill is back in town. I'm glad he got some vacation time, though. He certainly deserves it. So we will be doing that consistently on the first Thursday of the month. Eventually, we will be involving other nonprofits and also churches and involved community citizens that want to see things done and see some action. So those are the things we're working on.
Great, thank you, Howie, for organizing that, and thank you, mayors, for joining them. Howie, as the director of Champion Team for the next less than a month now, what things? How can people here on the call and in the community help with? What are the things you're particularly concerned about that you need help with in catching in terms of services, and kind of what are some of the things that you are concerned about dropping?
Well, if we don't find a building by the 30th of April for Encompass Yamhill Valley to get into, we've looked at 8 buildings. None of them, one of them was allowable. The balance of them, we were told no because of what we do, because of the drop-in center. So we're still on the look. We've got 4 new possibilities that we're looking at over the next week. So the drop-in portion of that may fall out for a short term. We will still be working on the safe overnight car camping program no matter what, so there's no gaps. We will be working on instituting people going to the different community dinners and breakfasts in the soup kitchen more actively, since we won't be able to feed anybody unless we find a facility that allows us in and has a kitchen. But we will still be able to do peer-to-peer support, whether it be by phone or internet or whatever. So we're just trying to get the word out right now that the possibility is that we may have to do some of this from home, and we may have to do some of this from a facility that is not a drop-in center. So my biggest concerns after looking at the facility out on Cumulus and knowing the price of that facility is that it's too modern. It would get wiped out within a month. So we just couldn't trust that facility to be the place, even though everything else about it's perfect. So the things that can help us is if anybody knows of an office space or a home that could be turned into a drop-in center for a few months until we can find the appropriate building, we would love to know about it.
All right, great. Thank you, Howie. And then I know that one of the real important things for folks is the services around helping them with court appearances, helping them with ID and driver's license, helping with filing taxes and stimulus checks. That kind of those administrative details of modern life. Do you anticipate being able to continue doing that through Encompass, or are others going to pick up that work?
I believe that we can do it through Encompass, and I believe that we can also get it done during the time frame between us finding a place, because Kristen Norton, who is our office manager, is more than willing to do the work by phone, by internet, whatever it takes.
Okay, great to know. Great to know. Thank you. All right, well, thank you for joining us. Are there any other comments or questions for Howie? Great. Well, thank you for all of your work, Howie.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any closing comments today?
Just have one. I think I've mentioned this to y'all before. I'll mention it again. I'm buying breakfast on Mayor's Prayer Breakfast Day, April 17th at Salem Cultural Center. If you'd like to come, and this is not just for mayors, it's for anybody, but and mayors can always, as I understand, mayors always can use a prayer or two. You know, it's what. So if you are, send me a note and we'll get you at the table. I think there'll be a virtual option too. But anyway, if you're interested, 8:30 on the 17th at Salem Cultural Center.
All right, great. Thank you.
Rick, do you have to RSVP?
If you could send me a note and then I'll get it to the organizers.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Howie.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And remember, on the community, the new guidance, right, is keep your distance, wear your face mask, get vaccinated if you can. And we can get through this. One of the things I forgot to note when responding to Mayor Watkins is that the governor is adding kind of a new criteria, and I know that usually there's groans around that. But in terms of moving from risk levels, the OHA will now be looking at hospitalizations because as more people who are at high risk of contracting COVID and complications of COVID get vaccinated, the case counts are not as closely correlated to hospitalizations, which is a really good thing. And I'm glad that the Oregon Health Authority is considering that. So stay safe out there, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Oh, just one thing.